You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the resistance and my fellow progressive patriots. I hope you're doing well. Monday, November 12th, I'm Dean Obeidallah. Hope as always to be your MBFF. If you don't have a Muslim buddy, I'm there for you. I'm there for you on Twitter, because I'm needy at Dean Obeidallah, Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, or drop me an email, which I'm so happy some people took me up on my pleading, my imploring you. During the campaign, many people were nice enough to suggest candidates they'd like us to have on. And we did. We had a lot of great candidates, and many of them you suggested. In fact, many listeners actually gave me contacts on the campaign to making it easier to book the people. Well, that is done now. And now we're focusing more on substantive issues. We're going to have elected officials on, of course, like always. But I'd love to hear from you about issues that you think are not being covered enough, that are undercovered. They don't have to be left-right. Just substantive issues that we're progressives. That inherently means we want to learn. That's what we're about. So send me an email, dean@deanofradio.com, and we will try to make it work the best we can. I hope you had a nice weekend. I was in North Carolina, Charlotte on Saturday. I emceed a dinner for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, which is a great organization. I've been helping them out and raising money and emceeing events for a while. And what a nice community down in Charlotte, North Carolina. And if you're interested in helping the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, which helps Palestinian children in need of medical attention, go to pcrf.net. So the weekend, SNL was back, had some funny stuff, which helps us a little bit about the first topic. But first, though, here's some fun stuff. Here was Kate McKinnon, who's fabulous on SNL, playing Jeff Sessions. And it will be the last time, I assume, she's playing Jeff Sessions. And it was him cleaning out his desk. And then Mike Pence, played by another SNL cast member, comes in. So let's hear this clip number one.
Goodbye, office. Sure did have some good times here during my almost 16 months as the Attorney General. My trusted Bible. I justified a lot of bad things with this book. Picture of my family tree. That was my room. Oh, here's my copy of the Bob Woodward book. In chapter 26, the president calls me mentally retarded. Look at this. I got the NAACP's first ironic award. It says Lifetime Achievement, parenthesis, sarcastic.
Jeff, are you going to be okay?
Oh, Mr. Vice President. Yeah, I'm going to be fine. I've been saving acorns for the long winter ahead.
I'm sorry this is happening.
That's all right. I mean, I don't understand what I did wrong, you know? I put kids in cages. I said no to gays. What more did y'all want?
Well, I'm sorry. I heard the words gays in cages and I went somewhere crazy. And my Apple Watch says I'm having a heart attack. Good luck, Jeff.
No. Where was I? Oh, right. Oh, look at this. A letter from co-writer Scott King calling me a son bitch.
So some funny stuff there. We will miss Kate McKinnon as Jeff Sessions. We will not miss Jeff Sessions unless, of course, you, maybe in the Klan, you'll miss Jeff Sessions. Barring that, you're not going to miss Jeff Sessions. Then on a weekend update, though, something interesting happened and something I had not seen before. And I worked at SNL for 8 seasons on the production staff there. And there was a firestorm last week, a little firestorm. We were so engulfed in the campaigns, wrapping down. It didn't get as much attention here. It got more on the right-wing media. But there's a young cast member on SNL. He's a comedian, Pete Davidson. And he made fun of a bunch of Republican candidates. And one of them he picked on was Dan Crenshaw, a former Navy SEAL who was wounded in Afghanistan. And it's all relevant today. Today we're observing Veterans Day. We are. Trump's not. Trump used veterans as pawns, as props. He doesn't really care about veterans. That's a difference. But here's what happened on SNL. So 2 weeks ago, you had Pete Davidson making fun of Dan Crenshaw, who wears an eye patch because he lost an eye in his 3rd tour of duty in Afghanistan. And he showed a picture of Crenshaw with the eye patch, and he said, you may be surprised to hear he's a congressional candidate for Texas and not a hot hitman in a porno movie. And added, I'm sorry, I know he lost his eye in a war or whatever. So there was some right-wing backlash, of course. Now, Crenshaw, to his credit, responded he didn't want an apology then. He said, I want to get us away from this culture where we demand an apology every time someone misspeaks. He did note, I'm sure veterans don't like being mocked for their war injuries, but I don't want an apology. And I think it's a moment of fresh air in a time where there's too much instant outrage over everything. So when things are really important, like someone's being truly racist or bigoted or sexist, the right's able to dismiss that by going, oh, you people always are screaming about stuff. And obviously this was right-wing being upset against him, but when you just have so much people outraged all the time, it dilutes the really important times, and that's really unfortunate. But there was SNL on Saturday, and Pete Davidson's at the Update Desk. He's not one of the anchors. That's Michael Che and Colin Jost, but he's up there for a segment. They call them Update Features. And he starts out by doing a sincere apology to Dan Crenshaw. And then you'll hear another person enter, and it's the real Dan Crenshaw who just won his election. It's not someone playing him. So let's hear clip number 2.
I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It was a poor choice of words. The man is a war hero, and he deserves all the respect in the world. And if any good came of this, maybe it was that for one day, the left and the right finally came together to agree on something. That I'm a dick.
You think?
Lieutenant Commander Dave Crenshaw, everyone, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for making a Republican look good.
You gotta stop saying that, man. You've been saying it all day. Please, look, I just wanted to say, for people that don't know, the reason you're wearing an eye patch right now is that you lost your eye to an IED in Afghanistan during your 3rd combat tour. And I'm sorry.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate you saying that.
So there he accepts his apology, even though he didn't want an apology. And then, in a fun moment, Dan Crenshaw does the same type of comedy bit that Pete Davidson did last week by showing a picture of Pete Davidson and making fun of him. It's all scripted jokes, obviously. It's not off the cuff. But I thought it was funny, and I think it goes to something bigger. Let's hear the next clip, clip 3.
Last week, I made a joke about a picture of you, and I feel like it would only be fair if you got me back and made fun of a picture of me. Does that sound okay?
I don't really need to do that.
No, come on. I deserve it.
All right, I'll do it.
Please? All right.
And now, first impressions with Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw.
Thanks, Colin. This is Pete Davidson. He looks like if the meth from Breaking Bad was a person.
Not bad. So there, we're even. All right.
Hold on, well, one more. This is.
All right.
He looks like a troll doll with a tapeworm.
Yeah, man. All right, that's good. We should wrap this up.
Oh, hold on. No, this is fun. This is fun.
Cool.
He looks like Martin Short in the Santa Claus 3. By the way, one of these people was actually good on SNL.
No, you're right. No, you're not wrong.
Snap. So he gets him there with some funny stuff. And then finally he concludes, and again, to me, this is relevant for 2 things. One is today the day we're observing Veterans Day and the sacrifice of so many women and men for our nation. And some have made the ultimate sacrifice. Others are here and fine and productive. Others are here and they're battling still demons. And then here's Dan Crenshaw just become serious for a moment. It's like 40 seconds. I want to play the clip. I thought it was a very nice gesture. It made me think for a little while. And by the way, Pete Davidson, and he references this, Pete Davidson's father was a fighter here in New York, and he was killed on 9/11, his father. So here is clip number 4.
But seriously, there's a lot of lessons to learn here. Not just that the left and right can still agree on some things, but also this: Americans can forgive one another. We can remember what brings us together as a country and still see the good in each other. This is Veterans Day weekend, which means that it's a good time for every American to connect with a veteran. Maybe say thanks for your service, but I would actually encourage you to say something else. Tell a veteran, never forget. When you say never forget to a veteran, you are implying that as an American, you are in it with them. Not separated by some imaginary barrier between civilians and veterans, but connected together as grateful fellow Americans who will never forget the sacrifices made by veterans past and present, and never forget those we lost on 9/11, heroes like Pete's father. So I'll just say, Pete, never forget.
Never forget. And that is from both of us.
So that was a beautiful moment. It's unlike typical SNL. I mean, usually they would joke it up at the end or something, but this time they let the sincerity flow. And there was one line Dan Crenshaw said that made me think, and I wrote about it for CNN yesterday. He said, "We can remember what brings us together as a country and still see the good in each other." And I thought about that because it's a discussion we have on this show often about the idea of finding common ground with Trump supporters. And I really, I'm not a kumbaya. I used to be a kumbaya type person. Like, let's all just get along. Can't we just find some common ground and come on, we can smooth things over. In the past, I did that. I think many of us did that. And Trump winning was part of us not delving deeper into what was beneath the surface, what was often ugly and hateful beneath the surface. We didn't think it existed. At least I honestly didn't. I'm not someone who's Pollyannic and thought, oh, everyone's great and people don't hate us and all that stuff. I knew there was hate out there. I just thought it was less of a percentage of this country. So I wonder, it's not like I think we can just sit around and join hands and sing, Elvis Costello's song, Peace, Love, and Understanding, or I Wish I Could Teach the World to Sing, or something like that. I don't know if in the time of Trump we can find this common ground. I think Trump has to leave as president because look at what's going on right now. It's Veterans Weekend. And right now, Trump is doing something that if Obama did, Trump himself and Fox News and the Trumpers would be going ballistic. And why does it matter they're being hypocritical? Because it makes us further apart. Because we don't agree on what is decent anymore. We don't agree on what is civil or compassionate or caring. And they celebrate cruelty. And I keep bringing this up. Their celebrations of cruelty. Today is the Veterans Day observed. Did Donald Trump go to Arlington National Cemetery to put a wreath down or say any words there? No. Is that unique for a president? Yes. Let me tell you how unique it is for a president. When Bill Clinton was president, every time, 8 times on Veterans Day, he went and put a wreath down. When President Obama was president, 6 out of the 8 Veterans Day, he went there. And the 2 times he couldn't, he sent Joe Biden. Last year, Trump didn't go because he was out of the country. So that's understandable. But this year, he's there. In fact, he's in the White House, less than 5-minute ride to Arlington National Cemetery. And what has Trump chosen to do? And this is all true. You may have been off today or maybe you're working. Trump has chose not to go to the cemetery to honor our veterans, even though he loves to talk about the veterans, loves to tout them, loves to use them as a prop. But when it's time to show some compassion, he doesn't go. What did he do today? He sat around as watching cable news and tweeting. You can look at his timeline. If you're not on Twitter, I'm not going to read his tweets. He's been tweeting all day. He's literally been sitting in the White House watching cable news and tweeting away. On Veterans Day, he could have done that, but he should at least went to Arlington National Cemetery and spent a few minutes, but he doesn't care. And it's so sad that there are veterans on the right and there are Trump supporters who are truly very patriotic people who will excuse this behavior and not even call it out. I don't mean they're going to stop supporting for this, but they should at least call it out so we can agree on what is decent. What is compassionate? How should you honor your veterans? The president of the United States, Democrat or Republican, should go to Arlington if they're in the country. It's that something they lay a wreath down. Again, Obama went 6 out of 8 times. Only 2 times he was not around. Last year, Trump was not in the country. So I didn't come on the show and go like, what is Trump doing? He talks about veterans. He's there. He's literally a handful of miles away. And he chose not to leave the White House all day today. Over the weekend, he did another thing. He's in Paris and he's getting blasted by Macron from France and others about his nationalism. He goes there and he was going to go to a cemetery there to honor our World War I veterans. He didn't go because it rained. Now, I'm going to be fair here. What I read is that Secret Service said Marine One, the helicopter, was not safe for a low ceiling to go. He could have driven there, but then he goes, oh, if we'd driven there, we would have caused traffic jams. He doesn't care about traffic jams in America, I can assure you. And as former Obama aides said, like Ben Rhodes tweeted, who worked with Obama for 8 years, said, we always had a rain plan. So if it rained and we couldn't get there, we'd figure out another way. Or you would do some other event to honor the veterans because you're there at a World War I to observe World War I. Now, Trump did nothing. He stayed in the U.S. ambassador's house, tweeted about garbage like usual. Meanwhile, French President Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, they went and laid a wreath at Saturday in the town where the agreement was signed to end World War I. Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Dreamy Trudeau, visited a World War I battlefield on Saturday where he greeted Canadian veterans. Trump didn't do any of that. He sat around. Now, why is Trump doing this? You know, Michelangelo Signorelli, we always pass each other here because we use the same studio. And he said, what do you think's going on? I don't care about what's going on in Donald Trump's mind, but I do think what's really going on is he's depressed. I think he's finally grasping that last Tuesday was a horrible loss for the Republican Party. Horrible. And horrible loss for him and potentially his family. Now, I don't mean legislatively because he doesn't care about that stuff. He'll sign executive orders and we'll go to court and all that. He's now getting the sense this is really bad for him. And I'm sure over the weekend he thought about everything from how do we not swear the Democratic members of Congress in? And I can assure you, knowing Trump, that was a question even in jest to the lawyers. Hey, maybe we don't have to actually swear them in, do we? It's in the Constitution. You do. You have no choice. It's going to be January 3rd. You can't get around that. And he could not attack countless elections around the country. And I wrote an article for NBC that came out today about the bluer wave just got bigger and bluer. Because since last week, we are now up to 31 confirmed House seats. And it looks likely now, based on the 13 outstanding races, that we will end up with 38 to 40 seats. And to put that in perspective, folks, that is the most seats we've gotten in a midterm since 1974. And 1974 happened just 2 months after Richard Nixon resigned because of Watergate. This is how big of an election it was for us. This was historic. This, for us, for a Democrat, was 40 years ago. It's remarkable for a midterm. And we won 7 governorships. And I think he's freaking out also about the election results. One is Arizona, and I'll update you on all 3 elections that are still outstanding. Arizona, Georgia, and Florida. And I checked them again right before we came on the show. So this is as of just an hour ago. Arizona's looking very good. I can't say it's going to be a win, but Democrat Kristen Sinema now has widened her lead over Republican Martha McSally to fill Jeff Flake's seat. Her lead is now up to 32,000. That's a 1.5% lead. However, before we celebrate, there's still, according to the Arizona Republic, the local paper there, about 200,000 ballots left to be counted statewide. And despite Donald Trump calling it fraud, the GOP leaders there, including the governor, said there's no fraud. This is how we count our ballots. This is our normal procedure of doing it. Will Sinema pull this out? I think there's a decent shot. And that means we would have picked up 2 Senate seats, this one and Nevada, that had been held by Dean Heller, where Jackie Rosen knocked her off. In Georgia right now, as of just an hour ago, still the gap between Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp, the third world leader of a country who can run his own election, but somehow that's Georgia. The gap is 58,000 votes. But if it comes down just 21,000, you may have heard a number, it's 21,000 vote gap. In reality, if it gets down 21,000 more votes, then it's going to trigger a December 4th runoff. So the gap really is around 50,000 votes right now. Tuesday, tomorrow is the deadline right now under Georgia law to certify the results of this election. But the Abrams campaign has filed a lawsuit seeking to delay the deadline until Wednesday and require counties to count their absentee ballots that have been rejected for certain missing information. So we might know that later today. We just got a decision in Florida right before this. We went on air about the Rick Scott case. I'll read you a little bit about that decision, which is important for Democrats. It's also important for democracy, frankly. So in Georgia, that's where that is right now. They have to certify by tomorrow unless Stacey Abrams wins in federal court and gets an extension for another day to count ballots. Florida, this is what really Trump is really freaking out about. Because Arizona, he's going to lose. Or they're going to win, whatever the ballots, wherever they go. But it looks like a Democrat might pick that up. Georgia, we're not sure. Florida, he's freaking out. And here's why. And it's something Tom Steyer said to me when he was here. He goes, without Florida, they can't win the governorship. And they know that. And that's why that's Trump's second home. So as of now, right now, there's a recount going on for a governor, for Senate, and for agriculture commissioner. They were all ordered Saturday. And here's a little clip of Andrew Gillum, great guy, the Democrat, mayor of Tallahassee, was a Democratic nominee for governor on Saturday, explaining a little bit about his posture now and why he revoked essentially his concession from election night. Let's hear clip number 5, please.
I am replacing my words of concession with an uncompromised and unapologetic call that we count every single vote. We count every vote. I've got to imagine that if the shoe were on the other foot of my opponents, not one of them would seek a different outcome. Not one of them would stand in the way of counting every vote. Today, a state-mandated machine recount will commence in the 67 counties all across the state of Florida. Our team has organized a cadre of hundreds of volunteers and lawyers to spread out all across the state of Florida to ensure to a fair and an accurate count in this process. I am prepared to accept whatever the outcome is of this election, so long as every single vote in this process is counted.
So that's Andrew Gillum. And I will accept the results of this election. And just so it's clear, the recount in Florida was not demanded by Bill Nelson, Democrat, or Andrew Gillum. It was triggered by Florida statute. By law in Florida, if your election's within 0.5%, that's less than 1%, within 0.5%, automatic machine recount. If it gets within 0.25%, then it's a hand recount of ballots, which takes longer, obviously. As of now, Saturday, there were 3 elections were called for a recount by state law. The Gillum-DeSantis gap, Gillum is trailing by 0.41%. In the race for Senate, though, it's remarkable. The gap is 0.14%. We're talking about a difference in the Senate race between Bill Nelson and Rick Scott of about 18,000 votes last I looked. And keep this in mind, there were over 8 million ballots cast, down to 18,000 votes. So we'll see how that works out. But Trump today freaking out, tweeting, the Florida election should be called in favor of Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis, and that large number of new ballots showed up out of nowhere, and many ballots are missed or forged. An honest vote count is no longer possible. Ballots massively infected must go with election night. Must go with election night. And again, here's another slight of the military. The reason part of it, we have till Friday in Florida to accept ballots from overseas because that's where the military is voting. So Donald Trump is saying that all the people in the military who are in active service from Florida, and there are a lot, their votes should not count. That's what he called for today in that tweet. Secondly, this tweet tells you so much about Donald Trump, who, if he could, would change every law in this nation to make it harder for people to vote against him and his GOP. And he would suspend elections and reverse elections if he had the opportunity. That is who Donald Trump is. And this is foreshadowing of 2020. I think he's trying to make it clear. I'm going to fight tooth and nail. I'm not going to leave the White House. It's rigged, all of that stuff. And by the way, there was a court decision just a short time ago in Florida. Rick Scott had filed a lawsuit seeking to impound certain machines in Broward County. That's where Brenda Snipes is the county election supervisor, and a lot of protests are going on outside. The judge there, Judge Jack Tudor, ruled against Scott that the ballots and the machines must be impounded. And the judge said there was no evidence of voter fraud. So now you have a judge, after looking after the evidence, said there was no evidence of voter fraud. The Secretary of State of Florida, who's a Republican, has also said there's no evidence of voter fraud. So now you have a judge and the Secretary of State saying there's no voter fraud, yet you have Rick Scott on television today and Donald Trump calling it voter fraud. It's ridiculous. And, here's just God bless their heart. You know what that means. There's Trump supporters outside right now of Broward County with signs like, stop the vote count, save our democracy. Because to them, not counting all the votes is democracy. Are there words for that? I could say a few, but I don't want to be demeaning and dismissive. But that's ridiculous. And this is what Donald Trump has done. He has radicalized Americans to say, stop counting ballots, because this is what he's done here. And again, to remind everyone, there was a poll, we covered it a few months ago. Nearly 50% of Trump supporters, nearly 50% said they would support Donald Trump suspending an election if he said we needed to secure the election to stop undocumented immigrants or voter fraud. Trump is ginning this up to we're going to get to a point where 70 or 80% of his base are going to be more loyal to Donald Trump than to the United States Constitution and to our American values. And they bring it all the way back to Weekend Update and to Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw, who made a great plea about the goodness in people and finding common ground. I so desperately want to get to that place. I so desperately want to get to a point where I don't view Trump supporters as people that I just share the same mass of land, but I share values with. But we don't. And I'm not going to be a kumbaya, let's just get along person on this. We don't. And we're not going to until Trump is gone. And maybe that fever runs its course when Trump is gone. I'm not sure. But I don't know if there's, Crenshaw said we have to find the good in each other. I don't know where the good is. I can't find common ground with someone who has no problem disenfranchising African American and Latino voters, and we're just keeping it focused on election stuff here, and stopping the counting of every ballot, and 50% of Trump supporters saying we could suspend the elections if Trump asked for that. Do we meet them halfway on destroying democracy? Is this what we do? So, look, we have a lot of guests tonight. In fact, we have a veteran coming on top of the hour, Mikey Sherrill, who won her congressional race in New Jersey. First time a Democrat's won her district in 30 years. Going to come join us at the top of the hour for a little bit. Then we're going to talk about the fire in California with Colin O'Mara, who's really expert on this stuff and what's really going on, and the intersection of climate change, which is making the fires more intense. And the third hour, Julian Zelizer. So this is your time. I'd love to hear from you, 866-997-4748. You're my guest at the top of the hour. We'll definitely get guest calls in between, but this is definitely your time. I'd love to hear from you about Veterans Day. If you're a veteran, what do you feel about what Trump did by not going? You're a veteran. If you're not slighted by him not going to Arlington, then don't, far be it from me as a non-veteran to say it's ridiculous. And maybe I'm too partisan and I look at it that way. But if you're a veteran and you are, I'd love to hear your view. I'd like to hear about, too, your reaction to what's going on in these elections here. There's no evidence of voter fraud on the Democratic side, but there's obvious evidence of voter fraud on the Brian Kemp side in Georgia, which is the most extreme example I've ever seen. Outrageous. I mean, so let's take a break. 866-997-4748. 866-997-4748. Give me a call. You're my guest right to the top of the hour right here on the Dino Badala Show. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dino Badala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.